I'm Richard Porter.
I'm Jonny Smith.
And this is On the Other Side of Things, the Smith & Sniff spin-off in which we answer your questions. I'm going to kick off with a question from a listener called Simon Clark. He actually signs off Simon the Gardener.
Okay. I thought you were going to say Simon and Garfunkel for a second, and I was going to say, really?
Or Simon the Garfunkel, which is some kind of weird existential question for the popular folky duo. But no.
It's where they've become one. Simon the Garfunkel. Yes.
Simon says, I'm a gardener and therefore professional podcast listener.
Yeah.
So thanks for a great start to a Monday morning, especially this time of year when I'm probably leaf blowing.
Oh, seriously? Please don't. Please suck, not blow.
Anyway, my daughter has just bought her first car, a 10-year-old Fiat 500, which has all the niggles you'd expect. But as it's her dream car, it's showing potential to make her a petrolhead, so that's okay. Plus, first cars shouldn't be perfect, because then you never learn how they work.
This is so true. You are bang on the money there, Simon. Absolutely bang on the money.
That's a good point. So Simon goes on to say, one of the problems is an as yet undiscovered slow puncture, which means a small top-up once a week. Luckily, the pressure is an easily remembered 2.2 bar. Yeah. So Simon's question is, do you have any car-related aide memoirs?
Gosh, that's really good. Aide memoirs for the 2.2. Actually, 2.2. I don't like bar. I find bar quite irritating.
No, I don't
That's
like
not
bar.
actually the question. But, of course, I've got a lot of Japanese cars, and they love a bit of bar.
It's quite a lot of bar around, isn't there? I'm
think.
a PSI stalwart, as I imagine you are.
I am. Yeah, I am a PSI man. It goes back to the days of bicycles.
Yeah.
And bike tyre pressure. I don't remember anybody referring to bar at all. But that's not Simon's question.
Invented.
Maybe bar.
No, well, I'll tell you, it's not quite what Simon was probably after, but as I might have mentioned, I've been back and forth to London quite a lot recently, and I end up staying in hotels if I'm there for more than one day. And I've had quite a run of staying in hotel rooms with numbers that are also cars. And I love that because it means I won't forget which room I'm in.
Oh, yes.
Because, in a modern hotel, they give you a little bit of cardboard with your room number on, and then the plastic key that gets you into your room itself. Inevitably, I never take the bit of cardboard with me when I then go out of my room again. And it's not written on the plastic card. So if you forget your room number, you've got to suffer that slight embarrassment of going to reception and going, hello, I'm a fully grown fuckwit who can't remember simple things. Could you tell me where I'm staying, please? So it's a joy to me when I get to my room or I look at the little bit of cardboard on the way up there. And so in the past few weeks, I had a run of them because I had 405. So it's like, brilliant. My brain goes, you're staying in medium-sized Peugeot.
Yeah.
And then later I come home pissed and try and get into 406 because I've forgotten which era of medium-sized Peugeot.
I do that. I do. Room 309, all those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, so I had 405, and then I think the following week I had 355. I was like, this is fantastic. Now I've got Ferrari. I can remember these. They all go in. This week just gone, I had to stay down in London, and I was put in room 211. But that's fine. That was a low-spec third-generation Rover 200. So it was locked in my brain.
It's funny you should say that because in the States with the kids, one of our rooms was 728, and I thought exactly that. Poverty BMW 7 Series.
Yeah. But hang on, that was the E38 that everyone said was sort of the best one in a way because it had that sweet straight six, and
that's sweet straight six. That's SSSS.
It's an extremely sibilant car, but I love that 728. Perfect.
That's it was a good room.
This thing. So I've had 3 on the bounce now of cars, and I'm going to be going back next week, and So I'm sort of fingers crossed I'll get something, I don't really care what, but just 626 or something like that. Just, it has to be car-y.
Oh,
then
lovely.
I'll remember it. I will not have to think again. It will be in there. But if it's just, some extremely random number like 491.
Well, there you go, because you've got many. So if it's room 140, I'll just be thinking of really aggressively driven, slightly vapey BMWs.
Oh, you see, I'd go Diana Spec Merc.
Oh, of course.
I might even just write a W on the room in front of the room number with a marker pen, just so I don't forget where I am. But.
That's a great idea. So, Simon, this question I think will probably chime with a lot of car perverts listening, but I don't think it exactly answers the question, Simon. But me and my brother, who are certified weirdos, and when you've got a brother thing, you have in jokes. I know you and your brother do, Rich, but. My brother refers to the sills of a car as the Terry Nutkins, and the reason why, if we're talking about it, he'll go, yeah, there's a bit of grot at the end of one of the near side Terry Nutkins. And I'll go, yeah. And it all stems from, years ago when we were both young kids watching the nature programme with Terry Nutkins, the Really Wild Show, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And Terry was into seals, massively into seals. And but because he's from London, he couldn't say seals. He said sills.
Oh.
So we're going to go out on a boat today and we're going to go and look at some wild walruses and seals. And ever since that moment, we always used to think, we know that Terry Nutkins can't say seals, so we'd refer to them as sills. Now, if you're an American person, you're going to be, there's two layers of confusion to what we're talking about.
Yes.
Because Americans call them rockers, I think, and... Yeah. Also, they won't know who Terry Nutkins is, but he's dead now. But he was a massive naturalist, and who had hair like Hulk Hogan, and had one or two of his fingers bitten off by beavers, or I can't remember.
I think it was an otter.
It was an otter. That's it, not a beaver. And but a really interesting guy, and lived in a castle in Scotland.
Did he?
He really did. Yes.
Wow.
With lots of children. I think he had about 8 children. So, but anyway, let's rewind it back.
That's so weird. If you'd asked me, I always thought that Nutkins had the whiff of a single man about him for some reason. I don't know why, but because he spends so much time hanging around by rivers and getting bitten by otters, that he had no time for dating. But
on the contrary, Nutkins was a damaged-fingered swordsman. That's what he was. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That's why people listen to this car-based podcast. For those levels of information, but yeah, the Nutkins is we refer to the sills of cars.
I was about to ask: are you now allowed between you and your brother to abbreviate and just go? Oh, he's gone over a curb and dented one of the Nutkins. Can you abbreviate? You don't have to say Terry Nutkins. It's not the Terry Nutkins all the time.
Yeah, Greg does. Greg does. There's other ones he's got, and I'll have to think of them in future episodes because Greg comes out with all kinds of things like that make me.
Got some brand new Nutkins from British Heritage to weld in
for the Mini.
So I'm going to start doing that now. I like that. The Nutkins,
Terry Nutkins. Yeah, bit of Nutkins. But it's almost like stupid Cockney rhyming slang where it's so layered. You might as well just say the word. It's all just getting silly. But where's the fun in that? Good question. Let's go on to another good one. This one's from Henry Whedon. Henry says, guys, after watching the superb last episode of the Grand Tour last night featuring the Capri and SD1, I started thinking, what is the best car to feature the Ford Essex V6, but not a Ford, and the mighty Rover V8, but not from a Rover? Talking from experience, I have a 1976 TVR 3000M, the anniversary edition with light brown paintwork, dark brown waistband and cream and brown interior with Martin on the side. I remember that colour. For a sporty car, it's such an odd colour combination, isn't it? It's such a dowdy colour combination, but I quite like it. with the Essex V6, which is great in such a light car, but you also have the ACME 3000, various Marcoses, there's many apostrophes and S's and Z's there. And of course, the Scimitar 2. Next is the Rover V8, featured in various forms in, again, TVRs, Marcoses, Morgans, MGBs. But I would like to hear your thoughts on that side of things and all that. Love the podcast, and I hope to come to a live event in 2025. Best, Henry. Well, thanks, Henry. This is, again, a really good question. But I don't think it's as easy as I initially thought.
Why? What did you have in mind?
Well, I was immediately going to jump up and say, hark, I say Scimitar, because it probably is my favourite non-Ford application of the Folds V6. However, because I'm not allowed that, because he's actually just said it in the letter, and that would make me look like I'm being thick and lazy. Do you know what? do you know what I'm going to say?
No.
Oh, okay. I think I'm going to say Gilban Invader, because it sort of is the logical. It's the Welsh Scimitar. That's what it was, right?
Yes.
And that had that V6 in it, along with many other Folds parts. So, and it's weird because I actually have thought over the last couple of months, what's stopping me from buying a Reliance Scimitar?
What is stopping you from buying a Reliance Scimitar, Johnny?
It's just simple storage. That's the only thing stopping me, because listeners, Reliance Scimitars are so cheap, and as long as you just make sure that you're either factoring in the cost of a rewire or you look at the current wiring situation, I just think they're a great car. And I desperately want to, and this is off piece now, I desperately want to EcoBoost a Reliance Scimitar. When I say EcoBoost, I mean the V6, not the 1 litre triple.
Now, wait a cotton picking second. I know. I like your EcoBoost V6 plan. However, did you see the other week that I think it was on the Autopian, the excellent car website from the US? They'd had a cars and coffee meeting that weirdly seemed to be in daylight.
That's just AI.
I assume they had it in northern Sweden or something, where in fact it was still 3 a.m. It's just light, because we know the rules. And
we do.
Somebody turned up with what looked like an original Corvette, as in a 50s one.
Wow. C1.
But it wasn't. It was, whoever built it had worked out that era of Corvette had, within a few millimetres, the same wheelbase as a BMW i3.
No.
And the i3 is effectively a skateboard onto which that carbon body is then fixed, partly with glue, apparently.
Yeah, or aerospace glue, yeah.
So this guy who'd built the Corvette got a repro Corvette shell,
yeah,
and then bought some of the official BMW glue and got an i3 chassis and melded the two together, and it looked fabulous. It's got sort of speedster look, so single seat and then a covered second seat, under which he'd installed all the sort of i3 dashboard parts that you'd need to control bits of the car, so you couldn't really see them, and didn't spoil the effect of this being. And then it's got sort of like LED lights and stuff like that, to sort of as a nod to it being a modern car, not a real old one. He wasn't trying to pass it off completely. But I thought one interesting idea, but sort of based on the fact that the wheelbase is matched.
That's
much in the same way. Do you remember those people who put a Corvette underneath an Allegro because they realised the wheelbases were very similar, like a sort of 80s Corvette, I think, or 90s?
Yeah, that's right. I do remember.
What was that called? Project something or other, I can't remember.
Yeah, it goes to Le Mans a lot. That's where it gets seen, that Corvette-based Allegro. It seems to do. Whoever owns it drives it, and they drive it over there a lot.
Okay.
But we love the wheelbase chat. We've been there before.
Yeah, we've done this before, haven't we? Unfortunately, it looks to me like a classic Scimitar wheelbase is 2,337 millimetres, and an i3 is 2,570. So there's about 200 mil in it. I'm not doing the
You're going to make me do.
Anyway,
we're going to go do the wheelbase game after this. I know we are.
We're going to have to. Anyway, I just thought if you fancied electric scimitar, but I liked your EcoBoost.
I'd do an EV scimitar. Yeah, I would do.
Only because I thought because it's got a fiberglass shell, you could pull the same trick as the Corvette man and just sort of drop a scimitar shell onto an i3 skateboard, and I'm sure that's dead easy if you've got enough glue.
You got me bloody thinking now. I didn't need any more distractions. You get
it's rolling a little hand grenade into your brain. I haven't. Just to answer Henry's question, I was thinking about this because I thought Rover V8, and originally I was going to say Land Rover 101 forward control, but I don't think that counts because it's still a Rover.
Sort of a Rover, isn't it? Yeah.
So I'm going slightly obscure here, and it's a car that actually used 2 Rover V8s at the same time.
Oh?
It's a one-off thing. Have you ever seen this called the Wolf Race Sonic?
Oh! Yeah, hasn't it got 6 wheels?
Yes, it has.
Yes.
Exactly that. I think the story is that Wolf Race, as in the wheel people, wanted to promote their new Sonic wheel, which is sort of pepper pot design.
That's right.
And so they decided to build effectively like a concept car, but a working concept car. So 6 wheels, all of them obviously to the new Sonic design. This incredible sort of open bodywork with a kind of hoop over it. Almost looked like some kind of relative in proportions to like the Pink Panther car or something. Just really outlandish, long nose.
It's a bit of George Barris about it. 80s George Barris, isn't it? Or late 70s
exactly.
Barris.
Yeah. I don't know who built it, actually. I presume it was built in Britain.
There's somebody who has spoken to me about this car in the last 12 months, and they've emailed me. Yeah, because I think it still exists.
No.
Yeah, I think it still exists, even though it's buried and damaged. Yeah, I'm sure I'm not dreaming this. I'll have to do some digging.
Oh my God.
It would be quite cool to find it.
Yeah, what a barn find that would be.
That would be a great barn find.
Anyway, if you haven't seen this, look at Wolf Race Sonic. But yeah, it had 2 Rover V8s, and apparently it worked.
Yeah, it did. It got driven to shows.
Bloody hell.
I've got a Rover V8 contender that's definitely not sexy. A real dowdy bastard. But what about Sherpa van, riot police spec?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
God, when I first moved to London, like the local ambulances, wherever they were run from, I'm sure a lot of them were still Sherpa vans at that point, because I used to love it. It sounds like a tasteless thing to say. I used to love it when an ambulance went flying by. But when they're a Sherpa V8 ambulance, it was for the sound. I just loved the sound. Like you could hear it even over the sirens.
I like a Sherpa. They're a very narrow, quite timid-looking van. But when you put a V8 in it and you dress it up riot police spec, they do look quite hard. So
yeah, well, actually, because those Sherpa 400s, they were a bit wider and stockier. I think they were the good-looking older brother of the Sherpa family at that point. But I know what you mean. The original Sherpa that was based on the sort of Leyland, the Sherpa from the 70s, they were a bit knock-kneed, weren't they? And kind of
they were like a sickly child.
Looking.
Would you call them like?
Yes, exactly. Never gets picked for sport. The Sherpa,
no, the Sherpa.
The transits and stuff, running around kicking a ball.
Yeah, the transit lads
sitting inside because it's got bad knees. Okay, well, Henry, I hope we've answered your question there. I was going to do a very quick one from Joshua Clark, who says, quick question for Richard. I was watching the BMW X6 review when Jeremy has to keep the segment cheap and simple, but proceeds to take it to all corners of the world, including Australia to test the glove box opening, Hong Kong to talk about a building, and Barbados to see if it's worth spending the money on a holiday there, plus Spain and the Alps. My question is, how was this segment filmed? Were they when the crew went and did Top Gear Live, or was it just testing the BBC executives' nerves? Well, so yeah, people remember this was a Top Gear segment where Jeremy was supposed to do a modest review of the X6, but it sort of kept popping up in different countries. I think, Joshua, you've sussed out exactly how it was done. A lot of it was, if Jeremy was in that country for Top Gear Live, then we would get a car sourced locally. In Australia and Hong Kong, both right-hand drive. So as long as you could get a car in the right spec and the right colour, just I think Did we? I can't
Very
remember if we
clever.
sent him out with number plates in his bag, maybe, or did we not bother? I can't remember now. And then Barbados, he was on holiday, and I think we just found someone locally who could go over with a decent quality camera and just film him.
That's a lot of foresight from the team.
I remember
piece
we
that
were
together.
very pleased with ourselves when we worked out that this was all going to be possible and not really, really expensive, but sort of would look expensive. You know,
Yeah.
the gag that he sort of walked out of frame on a drizzly airfield in Britain and walked back into frame with Sydney Harbour Bridge in the background. And in the days when, you know, television trickery was less sophisticated, so it was pretty much assumed it would be real,
Had
which
to be
it was.
there.
But yes, it was mainly piggybacked off Top Gear Live because they were paying to fly Jeremy around the world anyway. And then it's relatively cheap just to get a local camera person to film for half an hour to get what you need. So that's how it's done. Yeah, it was using where Jeremy was going to be anyway to our advantage. And then it's fairly simple just to ring BMW Australia and ask really, really nicely if we can borrow an X6.
Right, I'm going to read one out, and it's going to be... Do you remember the 1990 Dudley Moore film, Crazy People, which is about an advertising executive who had a breakdown and starts writing brutally honest adverts? I don't know this video. I've never heard of this film.
Really?
No.
Oh.
It's
Yes.
It's where the infamous Volvo, they're boxy, but they're good, comes from. Well, in that film, one of the honest adverts is this: Jaguar for men who'd like hand jobs from beautiful women they hardly know. My question is this: Did Jaguar know anything about this before the film was released? If they did, does that mean somebody at Jaguar had to have a meeting with the producers and approve this tagline? Who was that? And if Jaguar didn't know, what was the reaction from the company bosses, and did it affect sales in any way, either up or down? CMTMB, David. Wow.
I saw this question come in and I had a brief look around because I don't know the answer, and I didn't even bother to ask Jaguar because I assume there is nobody left at the company who would remember this, given it was, more than 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And in the US.
Yeah.
But I remember that in that film, he also, when he's having his breakdown and he just decides to write sort of more honest slogans, he does one for United Airlines, which is along the lines of, hey, don't worry, most flights don't crash, or something like that. I can't imagine United went, yeah, okay, yeah, that's fine.
We're all right
So
with
I'm going to assume, possibly because of First Amendment,
society being less litigious back then, maybe.
That's the thing. I don't know that they would have had to get permission, because that's it, isn't it? If it's sort of obviously in a comedy film and it's for parody, then it's all right. The weird bit is that, and I don't know if this has changed since the film was made, and this happens a little bit in UK TV, but it's absolutely prevalent in American TV, is that you have to get everything cleared. You know, anything that belongs to somebody else, like a logo, or I would presume a picture of a car, you're supposed to get it cleared from the people who own the rights to it. It's a bit of a nightmare. You know, like sort of street scenes.
Yeah.
In an American show, if someone's walking down the street and there's like an Exxon garage in the back of shot and a branch of Starbucks,
Yeah.
somebody on the production will have had to contact those companies and go, do you mind that your logo is in shot?
Oh my
And if they
gosh.
say no, it has to be removed, which is quite expensive and complicated. So
I was going to say, yeah.
they must have, I would assume, unless things were a little bit less tied down in those days, they would have had to go, because the Jag one has got a picture of a Jag in it, and I think the Volvo one too, and probably the company's logos to make it look like a real ad.
Oh my gosh. So how did they do that?
So they'd have had to go to them and gone, hey, we're going to use a picture of your car, is that okay? So, you know, maybe they did have to go, yes, this is fine. I honestly don't know the answer. I could only speculate on this.
I've never seen the film. I'm now going to watch it in the next fortnight because I feel like I ought to. But I realised, looking at the crazy people IMDb, that it also stars Daryl Hannah. And whilst not related to the question whatsoever, I've always had a slight problem with Daryl Hannah's name, because to me, Daryl Hannah sounds like the kind of guy who does airbrushing of motorbike helmets and custom bike tanks and lives down the road a bit and definitely has never been married. And it correlates to a letter that we had, which isn't actually a question, from somebody called Sander Hopp, and they said, "Hi from Munich, you pair of SSGs. As you might know, Munich has a very interesting car scene." I love that, interesting. Here are some recent spots that made me giggle. And he sent actual photos of a purple Opel Manta with what looks like...
Yes.
I think is it a werewolf bursting out of the bonnet with a full moon behind it?
If you're a Patreon, something like that.
If you're a Patreon, we will share this. And it's a really good condition Manta, but the airbrushing is questionable.
Daryl
did that. Daryl Hannah for cash did that.
No, you're right. Daryl Hannah. Now you've pointed it out. Daryl Hannah is a confusing name.
It's the last person I would expect Daryl Hannah to be is a beautiful woman, and it's always confused, scared, made me question the world a little bit. I wasn't expecting to bring this up on today's Otosot, just so you know.
Okay, really quickly, Andrew Belton says, I recently watched Johnny's excellent review of the new Renault 5 with friend of the show, Greg James. It got me thinking, what opportunities do you see for tuning EVs? And will you need to be a computer scientist or electrical engineer?
Oh,
Andy in Melbourne.
Andy, that's a good question. I've had this a few times. So I think that we're going to see, in the same way that laptop tuning, software tuning of piston cars with complicated ECUs and things has grown exponentially with cottage industries. I actually think we're going to see more of that, so more independent people repairing EVs and servicing them anyway. But in terms of breaking the software, that's going to definitely vary depending on various cars, because I know the guys... what are they called? Shit the bed. What are they called? They've changed their name. Felton. So the guys in Bristol called Felton, who buy a lot of broken Teslas, hack the brain of Teslas so that they can check the conditions of the battery cells and interchange those. They also develop their own kit now. They've been working at it for a long time, and they're quite pioneering. But I think the first thing to do with an EV, if you're tuning it, is suspension. Because I'm thinking of getting an Ioniq 5, and the first thing I want to do is to make it firmer. Not silly firm and uncomfortable firm, but just a little bit more pointy.
Right,
in the cornering department. So, and of course, all that's pretty regular, isn't it? Wheels, tyres, suspension, brakes. It's all quite regular, and that in all that, you know.
Yeah. Good answer.
There you go, Andy.
Sensible answer.
Put that in your Melbourne pipe and smoke it. Actually, don't put it in any pipes because it's an EV that doesn't have any. So, just don't.
Yeah.
But thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you for your questions. Keep them coming. hello@smithandsniff.com. We do read all of them. We do, as you've just heard, answer as many as we can, but we do get quite a lot. Back for a normal ep on Monday and then another Otosot on Friday. Until then, goodbye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.